Hello, everybody. I want to thank you guys for joining us on Friday's episode today of Spilling the Anxiety. So, today we actually have a very awesome interview for you guys. It is from an author from the UK. She wrote a book called A Girl from Pompeii. I know that rhymes. I'm not trying to get my Dr. Seuss on, I swear. It is a lot to take in, and I want you guys to absorb this because this book speaks directly to what's going on here at Spilling the Anxiety. So she is the author. It is a memoir of what she has gone through in her past 10 years coping with mental health struggles, substance abuse, etc., etc. And I think that she is very open and very honest, and I am so delighted to bring her onto the show. Her name is Bryony Best. I am very excited to bring her onto the show because I feel like she is going to help us shine a light on kind of what happens when you are losing your battle in that struggle with mental health. Everybody copes with their things differently. Not everybody smokes, not everybody drinks, not everybody does drugs. There are other ways. Some people overeat, some people compensate in other ways. And I think that whatever coping mechanism you use, it is important to know that it is a vice and how you succumb to it will directly affect the rest of your life and the people involved. So we are going to take a little break, and when we come back from the break, we are going to jump into our interview with Bryony, and I hope that everybody pays close attention because I think she has a lot of great things to say. Also, I will leave all of her social media information at the end so you guys can go ahead and drop a follow and give her some support on this journey, just like we all need sometimes. So stay tuned. When we come back, we will start the interview. All right, folks, we are back here today with Bryony Best, a UK-based author who published her first book, The Girl from Pompeii, in November 2021. The Girl from Pompeii shares a brutally honest account of living with overcoming drug addiction, alcoholism, and trauma. This book is inspirational and thought-provoking, and you'll have a hard time putting it down. Bryony, thank you for joining us today. I'm so excited to delve into The Girl from Pompeii. I love that this book explores the struggles with mental health and addiction and potentially using substance to the point of abuse to self-medicate. What can you tell us about how you started with the idea of writing this book?
Well, I've always meditated. I've always been into well-being, even when I was what you'd class as a drug addict and an alcoholic. And I was meditating one day, and the inspiration just struck that I actually need to share my story with others to almost normalize some of the emotions and the processes of being an addict and for mental health as well. It used to be such a taboo subject, but I think nowadays that people are more open to talking about it and to admitting things and to making it more, well, normalized, if you want to put it that way. And when I have spoken to people about certain traumas or mental health or addictions that I've been through, people are always like, what? And I'm like, is that not normal? They're like, no. Even silly things like as a child, my dad used to suffocate us from behind and tell us that he was making us strong. And I'm like, yeah, it did. It made me strong. And they're like, that's not normal. So I'm like, okay, I need to share this with the world and let other people know that there is hope. Because when you're in that place, especially with mental health or addiction, it doesn't really feel like there's a light at the end of the tunnel for some people. And I think it's important to show actually, I was this bad and look where it actually ended up going. And I think that's what's given a lot of people inspiration and why people are contacting me about the book as well. So that's really how I decided to write the book.
I think that's very brave of you, to be honest. I think that we all have those things. I feel like as kids we have these moments where there are things that you're not quite sure are normal, so you kind of pass it off as a joke like, "Hey, did you guys ever?" And then you say it in conversation, everybody's like, "Oh my god, yeah, me too." But then there's those awkward moments where everybody's like, "No, that really didn't happen to anybody else but you." But it's because you're surveying such a small group of people. But when you reach out, I know that there are certain experiences in my life that I've been through that I'm just like, oh my God, this doesn't happen to anybody. So I stay away from the public because I don't want to share it. And then I'm like trolling some of the mental health forums and Twitter and all this other stuff. And I see somebody who went through something similar, and I'm like, oh my God, we should start a support group because this is it. There's somebody else who's been through this. We can talk about it. So I think that that's really brave of you to put all of this out there in this book, which brings me to my next question. Did you feel like you were kind of on display while you were writing this book? I mean, it is about you, it's about your experience. So, were there kind of moments where you felt like you needed to leave something out or omit it because you weren't comfortable how it would come across?
Yeah, that most of the book, but most of it, none of it really paints me in a good light, if I'm honest. And there's a lot of stuff in the book. It's very open. I'm sharing some of the most personal things about myself with the world. And yes, you're hoping it's going to help others, and it is, which is brilliant. But you are still sharing some of your deepest secrets that some people don't even maybe share with their best friends or their mom or whoever they're close to. And you edit the book a lot. So you send it off, and or you send it to your proofreader, or you're going through it yourself. And as you read stuff, you think, yeah, I look really bad there. I look, I don't really want people to know that. And especially myself, knowing that certain people would be reading the book. So I actually didn't take anything out the book because I wanted it to be authentic. And if I took out all the stuff that made me look bad, it wouldn't have been a real experience. It wouldn't be portraying what really happened. There was a part in the book where I talk about a thought process I had because I was quite sex mad, if I can say that. And I remember looking at one of my mum's ex-husbands, and in the book, it says about how I thought about what it'd be like to actually go to bed with him. And I thought, I can't put that in there. I have to take it out. I thought, no, I thought I can't because it loses something within the book.
It loses its authenticity.
Yeah. So the only thing I actually did take out of the book is one thing about my mother, if I'm honest. And I even had to talk to her about the rest of it because my mum was never perfect. And we're very close and have a very loving relationship now. So I left the most of it in there, but there's just one or two things I took out because I thought she's an elderly lady, she's 75. I thought she doesn't really need to be reading certain things. So I took a few things out for her, but everything else I couldn't touch it. I couldn't. It wouldn't have been true. I wouldn't be true to myself if I had, or true to any of the readers.
So, I actually mentioned this in I believe a podcast earlier this week that while my promise to those on my podcast is that I will be brutally honest with my experience, because if I'm not, then that means that I'm doing you a disservice. I'm not telling you what it really is. The whole point of me doing this is to outline really what it's like with mental health, really what it is. And sometimes that means that I'm not the shining star of what's going on. I don't want this to come across as, oh my God, everything has happened to me and I'm just sitting here absorbing it all like a starfish, and just this is what happens. I think that part of healing and part of getting better was me admitting the things that I had done wrong to get my life to where it is. Even though I still don't feel like the things that happened were deserving, I think that there are still some things that I can take responsibility for and say, yes, this happened because I did this. I shouldn't have done this. I really did fuck up someone else's feelings. I need to take ownership of that, because when you just sit there and put all the blame off onto everybody else, it's really, you're lying to yourself, and you're not going to get anywhere because you're going to get stuck in this delusion that you play no part into what's going on in your life. And I think that, certain decisions, when you if you fall into addiction, or if you fall into, for me, I had a struggle, and I still do, with my weight. And I had actually a conversation with a friend who, she was kind of like, ugh, I don't know how some people get to be as big as they are. Like, how do you just get to that point where you just keep eating, keep eating, keep eating? One day you're 600 pounds. And I'm like, well, I'm not 600 pounds, but I can understand the sentiment, because I sat there and I would feed myself because I felt like it was the only thing I had control over. And I knew as I was eating that it was killing me. I was clogging my arteries like no tomorrow, but I had to take responsibility for the fact that I knew I was eating garbage. I knew I was eating shit. I knew I was gaining weight, and I didn't want to stop, because if I stopped, then there was nothing else in my life that I had control over at the time. So I think that I commend you because it's hard. And I also had to, part of my life experiences involve people that are close to me, my best friend, my mom, my kid's dad. These are people that are not going away. So when you decide to be honest, like writing a book or doing a podcast, and you're speaking about your own experiences, inevitably you're going to drag those people in because you're going to highlight some of the things that they may have done to help facilitate the stuff that you've gone through. And you don't really, they didn't sign up for this. You don't want to put them in the negative light. But, I've mentioned stuff about my mom that I'm just like, I know she's listening to this and she probably doesn't agree, but this is my experience with it. I don't want people to like hate my mom because they don't like what, my mother wasn't perfect either. But it definitely is a fine line to tread. So I commend you for that. So, what do you think that you talk about how in the book, how you found your path to happiness? And I think more so, I want to word this appropriately, but what was like your ultimate bottom where you were like, I need to find the path that's going to get me out of this, the path to me feeling fulfilled, being happy? Where do you think that you reached that point and how did you decide to forge ahead?
I think for me, it's difficult because I don't want to put any positivity on drink and drug addiction, but I was a functioning drug addict and alcoholic. So I was still going to work. I had multiple jobs. I had friends, I had a social life. I wasn't just sat in drinking by myself, although I did a lot anyway, and round the pubs by myself. But for me, the reason I think I hit the rock bottom was because I'm very much a person who's obsessed with control. And I like to be able to be in control of most situations. And even if I drank a couple of bottles of Jack Daniels, I was still normal to most people. So what actually changed for me is when I lost that control. I actually went into work one day and I was swearing, effing and blind is what we call it here in the UK. I was going, I hate Mondays, bloody Mondays, blah, blah, blah. And someone looked at me and they went, it's Friday. I was like, what? They're like, it's Friday. So I'd blacked out for 5 days. So that was
Wow.
step, hmm, I don't like this. I don't know where I've been. I had people that were after me, and that sounds very shady to say that, but I had to sleep with knives under my bed, baseball bats by the door. I was in a bad place. So for me to not remember who I spoke to could be the death of someone or the death of me. So that was the first step. I thought, right, I need to do something about this. I already had quite a few medical conditions, which most people that drink will understand, like blood and feces, throwing up blood, and severely shaking and throwing up blood when you haven't drunk for a few hours, all these typical things that you get. But what added to that is my speech started coming out backwards. So I started blacking out and my speech started coming out backwards. And at the same time that this happened, because I was assessed at a place called Kingsway House in Portsmouth, my sister, I've got a lot of older brothers and sisters. She's 16 years older than me. She already had 3 children, and I knew she was pregnant with her fourth. Well, I didn't know she got taken into hospital, and she kept getting moved from two main hospitals, and they kept saying that she's probably going to not make it. They didn't know what was wrong with her, and the baby probably won't make it. And in her state on the bed, she turned around, and she was on morphine at the time, and she said, I want Bryony to take care of my kids. And I was like, what? Out of everyone, you chose me? I was like, right, I need to do something about this. So Kingsway put me into a rehab clinic, and I did actually get off the drink and drugs for at least 2 weeks, which is a long time for me. And unfortunately, my father passed away, and I used it as an excuse, just went back on the drink again. And then it was a very slow process of coming off of alcohol. I managed to stop most of the drugs, but it was a slow process because as a drinker, you go, well, wine's not really alcohol because it's not. I drink whiskey. Wine's not really alcohol. And it sounds so ridiculous to say as someone who's sober now, but when you're someone who's in that moment, you truly believe that. I'm not an alcoholic because I haven't drunk before work today. I'm not an alcoholic because I didn't put Baileys in my cornflakes. I'm not an alcoholic because I didn't have a drink until I got home from work. And you believe this stuff with such clarity. And it's such a strange process. So the process of me coming off the drink completely was a very long process. And I started the book when I was probably in my final stage of coming off the drink. And the process of me coming off the drink was probably a good few years. And that's when all the mental health came out. When I was drinking, I thought I was fine. I was drinking, I was living life, doing what I wanted. And then as I was trying to get sober and learn how to live in the world as a sober person, and my point was, well, if I could live in the world sober, I wouldn't drink, would I? And so it was a very slow road to recovery, is what I will say about that.